Welcome to Stories of the Wanderer, a calming sleep story series created to help you unwind and gently drift into rest. Tonight we enter the fourth chapter of Where the Roots Speak Slowly, the Lantern Grove. In this chapter, the wanderer wanders through the canopy at dusk, drawn toward a hidden grove filled with softly glowing lanterns, where warm light, quiet reflections, and a gentle message of connection surround him, guiding him into a deep sense of peace as night settles and he drifts to sleep beneath the trees. A deep hush fell over the rainforest canopy as dusk settled over the treetop village. The final light of day softened into gold and lavender stripes, filtering through broad leaves in delicate beams that caressed the wooden walkways. The air was warm and damp with the last breaths of daylight, carrying the sweet aroma of orchids and the green scent of ferns on the evening mist. High above the unseen forest floor, the world felt cradled in twilight, safe and far removed from any care or urgency. The wanderer moved slowly along an elevated walkway, bare feet touching smooth, rain-damp boards. He had no particular destination in mind, only a gentle urge to wander as the day bowed out. A small lantern hung from a curved staff in his hand, its light not yet needed in the lingering glow of sunset, but comforting to carry. With each step, the walkway gave a familiar little sway, the soft ropes and planks rocking him like the high branches of the trees that held them. Overhead, the first stars began to appear where the sky showed between leaves, the blue above deepening toward indigo. The daytime birds had settled into silence, their final chirps fading into memory, and the creatures of the night had not yet raised their voices. This was the borderland between day and night, a time of profound stillness, when the world seemed to hold its breath as if expecting something gentle and magical to occur. At a fork in the path, the wanderer paused, resting a hand on a vine-wrapped railing. From this vantage, he could see a few lanterns already kindled near the cluster of treetop homes, a handful of golden lights glowing like grounded stars among the leaves. Here and there, silhouettes moved quietly in windows or on porches. Perhaps families were finishing their suppers or tucking children into bed with a lullaby. A faint melody played in the distance, the soft notes of a flute or maybe a reed pipe. He closed his eyes and let the soothing tune mingle with the rustle of distant leaves and the last sigh of the retreating daylight. When he opened his eyes, they were drawn to something out of the ordinary. Not far beyond the familiar homes, deeper into the woods, a cluster of unusual lights glimmered. Through the gauzy mist, dozens of tiny gleams shone amongst a stand of trees, flickering not quite like any stars or fireflies he had seen. Fireflies tended to drift and blink greenish white, but these were steadier and a warm amber gold. They hung suspended in the dimness, as if a patch of the night sky had settled into the forest itself. Curiosity stirred gently in the wanderer's chest. He tilted his head, trying to recall that part of the village. It was a small clearing, a little removed from the main dwellings, a spot sometimes used for festivals or storytelling, though none was scheduled for tonight that he knew of. No voices or laughter floated from there now. The quiet made the mystery of those lights all the more compelling. Drawn by the glow, the wanderer left the main walkway. He took a narrow side path leading toward the lights. The path's planks, soft with moss at the edges, flexed slightly under his careful steps, as if surprised by a visitor. Ferns arched over the railings and brushed his arms, misting him with cool droplets. His little lantern swung at his side, its flame trembling with each step. As the path curved and brought him nearer, the enigmatic lights grew stronger and more distinct. At last, he stepped out into the lantern grove. The sight that greeted him made him catch his breath. Suspended among the colossal trunks and limbs were dozens upon dozens of lanterns, shining at every height. The grove's wooden platform, which connected 3 ancient trees, was bathed in their golden glow. The platform was expansive and roughly circular, bordered by railings that supported climbing vines and broad leaves. Above, the trees opened up to the night sky, which was now dotted with stars. They looked down like curious eyes on the spectacle of light created by the villagers. It was easy to see why this place was chosen for special gatherings. It felt slightly removed from time, an open-air hall high in the sky. The lanterns themselves were as varied as seashells on a shore, each one unique and lovingly made. Nearest him, a lantern woven from strips of palm leaf cast dancing patterns of light on the wooden floor. Another, perched on a railing post, was a round gourd pierced with tiny holes in the shapes of constellations, sending splashes of starlight onto a nearby trunk. Glassy orbs dangled from branches, their insides aglow with what looked like softly shimmering moss. Others contained slow-moving fireflies that floated within like living embers. Some lanterns rested at the base of trees, shining upward and turning the undersides of leaves to a luminous green. The entire grove was a gallery of warm lights. The drifting mist caught the radiance and diffused it, so the atmosphere itself glowed in a haze of gold. The wanderer walked into the heart of the grove with quiet wonder, as if approaching a sacred place. He found himself smiling. The gentle illumination uplifted him, and also filled him with a sense of calm belonging. Spotting an empty hook on the railing, he decided to add his own little lantern to the display. He unfastened it from his staff and hung it up, where it mingled its flame with the others. For a moment he stood back and marveled at how much light could come from a simple collaboration of small flames. Moving further in, he noticed that even in the absence of people, signs of their presence were all around. To his left, on a curved bench that had been grown naturally out of a living branch, someone had left a woven flower garland. Its white star-shaped blooms were still fresh and fragrant, perfuming the air with a jasmine-like sweetness. A few steps away, a little clay cup sat forgotten on the floorboards, a shallow puddle of cold tea inside. Perhaps someone had set it down and become too enchanted by the scene to remember it. On the wood next to the cup, the wanderer could just discern a pair of faint footprints in the moisture. Side by side, he imagined 2 friends standing there arm in arm as they admired the lanterns and the mist before quietly departing. Even though he hadn't been among them, he felt connected to whoever had come and gone. The love and reverence they'd shared here were still present, like an invisible guest lingering in the glow. One lantern in particular drew his attention now. It hung a little apart from the rest, at the end of a short, offshoot platform that jutted toward the dark expanse of the forest beyond. This lantern glowed with a unique, rhythmic radiance that set it apart. The wanderer walked to the end of the path to inspect it more closely. Up close, the lantern was even more exquisite. It was an orb composed of delicate wire and translucent silk panels. Inside, arranged in a spiral, were tiny seashells, each coated in some gentle phosphorescence. They emitted a soft white light that waxed and waned in unison, as if the entire lantern was slowly breathing. It reminded the wanderer of a small moon, or a living creature slumbering and dreaming in mid-air. A gentle heat came from it, and as it swayed slightly in the faint breeze, the patterns on the silk shifted. The light played across the wanderer's fingers when he reached out, painting them with a pearly sheen. He could feel the care and creativity imbued in this object. Whoever made it had done so lovingly, perhaps for a special reason. The placement of this beautiful lantern at the grove's edge made him suspect it bore a message. He turned to the nearby railing and, as expected, found a few characters lightly carved into the wood. The lantern's glow fell upon a line of text etched into the rail. The wanderer leaned down to examine it, running his fingertips over the indentations in the wood to help his eyes focus in the dim light. At last, he could read the words. All lights find each other in the dark. He whispered the line as he read it, the sound of his own voice mingling with the rustle of leaves. The sentence was simple and unadorned, but as he spoke it, a tide of emotion gently washed over him. He felt the truth in those words. Standing here in this glowing grove, how could he not? The meaning settled gradually in his heart. Every light needs others, and even in darkness, they naturally come together. He looked up at the lanterns above and around him. Each one might have been lit by a different person with a different wish or prayer, yet here their lights joined and became one gently shared brightness. The whole grove was greater than the sum of its parts, unified by light and love. A tightness in his throat made him realize he was deeply moved. He placed his hand over the carving in a gesture of silent thanks to whoever left it. For a long moment he stood there, breathing slowly, feeling his heartbeat calm and steady. The words had given him a gift, a reassurance that even when he roamed on his own, he was part of something larger, a web of light and friendship spanning the treetops. He wondered who might have written that line. Perhaps an elder with a kind heart, perhaps a pair of friends who met here earlier in the evening, commemorating their bond. Or it might have been written long ago, and the tradition of lighting this grove was born from it. However it came to be, the idea shone clearly. His mind drifted to a personal memory. He recalled a time, years ago, when he had felt particularly alone and anxious. Late that night, a dear friend had quietly placed a small candle outside his window. He remembered seeing its gentle flame wavering in the dark, casting comforting shadows on his wall until he fell asleep. The friend had never mentioned it afterward, but he had known who it was from the kindness of the gesture. That simple light had chased away his loneliness. Now, reading the inscription, he felt the same comfort in knowing that someone out there cared enough to leave a light and words of hope for others. Another memory surfaced. Not long ago, the villagers had decorated the oldest tree in the village with hundreds of candles and paper lanterns to celebrate a festival. He could still picture the flicker of those lights in the leaves and the looks of wonder on everyone's faces. He remembered helping a small child hang a lantern, how the child's eyes sparkled and laughter rang out as the tree began to glow. In this quiet grove, he felt that same childlike wonder kindle in his own heart. The wanderer breathed in, drawing the cool, fragrant night air deep into his lungs. He felt gratitude, gratitude for the unseen hand that left this message and for the caring community around him. Even though they were not physically present at this moment, their spirits were here in these objects and in the love suffusing the air. The forest itself seemed to share in that gentle sentiment. The giant trees stood silently lighting the lanterns. The mist tenderly carried the light, and the darkness provided a peaceful canvas for it all. He found that the words on the railing had naturally slipped from his lips again. All lights find each other in the dark. Saying it felt like a prayer or a blessing. Immediately after, the nighttime orchestra swelled softly around him, as if in agreement. Frogs hidden far below croaked in rhythmic patterns, and tiny insects added a shimmering undertone from every direction. The entire canopy seemed to be singing a low lullaby. He closed his eyes and listened. The sounds and the silence between them had a rhythm that matched the slow rise and fall of his chest. As he breathed, he meditated on the thought behind those carved words. Yes, here, high in these trees, even when one was alone, they were enfolded by the lights of others and by the vigilant presence of the forest. It was a safety net of light and life. The wanderer felt it in his very being, a profound sensation of belonging and ease. After some time, he noticed the hush deepen further. Night had fully arrived. The breeze had stilled, leaving the mist to linger in place. The temperature had dropped a little more, and a fine layer of dew had settled on the broad leaves and wooden railings, making them glisten in the lantern light. Each breath he took felt slightly cooler and sweeter. He opened his eyes. The scene was even more dreamlike now. The mist had thickened into gauzy curtains between the trees, and the lanterns shone through it like diffuse orbs, their edges blurred. It was as though he stood inside a living cloud of light. Above, countless stars peeked in and out behind slow-moving veils of vapor. There was no sharpness to any horizon, no hard edges, only a soft blending of light, shadow, and gentle color. A tiny shiver ran through him, not of discomfort, but of the night's coolness catching up to his body. He wrapped his shawl tighter. As he did, he rediscovered the little feather he had picked up earlier in the day, still tucked safely into the fabric. Smiling, he drew it out once more and turned it between his fingers. The feather's barbs were nearly the same color as the mist, pale silver with a faint sheen. In the glow of the lanterns, it seemed to almost disappear except for a faint outline. Such a small thing, drifting on unpredictable breezes, yet it had come to him. He thought of all the gentle signs that had guided him through the day, the distant humming that led him onward in the morning, the mysterious spiral carved inside the old tree's trunk, the feather that floated down at the perfect moment, and this hidden grove of lights waiting for him at day's end. It was as if the world had been leaving him loving notes all day long, each one lighting the way to the next. A quiet laugh escaped him as he pondered this. He truly had been following little lights, aural, tangible, and emotional, from dawn to dusk. His gaze wandered over the lantern-lit sanctuary, taking in every detail so he could keep it with him. These gently swaying lights, left by caring hands, would continue to glow for hours, perhaps until they naturally flickered out or were collected the next day. He felt honored to have discovered this place at just the right moment. Even though he had been alone when he set out on his evening stroll, he now felt as if he had arrived at a reunion of friends he'd yet to meet. He remained where he was for several minutes, content just to be in the glow. Finally, he yawned, feeling the weight of the day's quiet adventures upon him. The night invited him to rest, and he was inclined to accept that invitation. He realized he would rather sleep here in the aura of the lanterns than anywhere else. Looking for a comfortable spot, he noticed a great gently curving root, coated in plush moss and shaped conveniently like a reclining couch. It was as if the tree itself offered him a bed for the night. He walked over and carefully settled onto it. The moss was cool and soft beneath him, and it released a calming scent of earth and green when he adjusted his weight. Now lying on his back, the wanderer had a wonderful view of the lantern-adorned branches and the starry sky beyond. The darkness above was vast and beautiful, with brilliant points of light scattered across it. One particularly bright star twinkled directly overhead, framed by two lanterns, one greenish with moss, one golden and shaped like a flower. In his relaxed, sleepy state, it almost looked as if the star and those two lanterns were speaking to each other in their own silent language of light. He remembered the belief that stars might be the souls of loved ones watching over the world. Under this dome of glimmering sky and friendly lanterns, it was easy to believe. The boundaries between the earthly and the celestial felt so thin. Perhaps, he mused, the lights we kindle on earth are noticed by the stars above, and they twinkle a little brighter in response. A profound peace filled him from head to toe. He let his arms rest on his chest and felt his breathing slow. The symphony of the night continued in the background, frogs in a steady, slow rhythm, and insects weaving lace-like threads of sound. At one point, he heard a gentle creaking noise, a rope bridge swaying or the call of a night bird. He wasn't sure. The sound was subtle and brief, but it reminded him that others might also be out in the night, perhaps moving towards their own resting places. It comforted him to know he was not the only soul awake in the dark. His thoughts drifted like wisps of cloud across the moon. Pleasant images from earlier floated by. The sunbeams of early morning that had pierced through fog, the taste of warm tea on his tongue, the sound of rain pattering on leaves during the afternoon's drizzle, and the echo of a distant lullaby that had graced the dawn. Each memory glowed softly in his mind's eye, like a lantern of its own. He saw how each one was connected, forming a chain of gentle experiences that had guided him through the day. The idea made him smile. The day itself had been like a string of lights leading him here. All lights find each other in the dark. The phrase returned to him once more, wrapping itself around these memories and binding them together. That was the thread connecting each event. The humming voice, the secret tree, the rain-lit pool, the feather, the lanterns. Each was a bright point that led to the next in his journey. Even the moments that had felt solitary or surprising were part of a greater, shared illumination. He felt the urge to close his eyes. Sleep was now touching the edges of his consciousness, soft and insistent. He could sense it in the profound heaviness of his limbs and the way his thoughts were loosening into dreams. But before giving in, he took one more slow look through half-open eyes. The lanterns above glimmered like friendly stars among the treetops. How fortunate I am, he thought, to be here, to witness this. Just then, a meteor streaked overhead, a thin, bright line flaring and fading in an instant. The wanderer watched its brief flight with a drowsy smile. It felt like a final benediction from the sky, a shooting star sealing the promise of the words carved on the railing. Somewhere far away, perhaps another person looked up and saw that same meteor, and for a moment their heart would lift, connected to this universal night. The frogs' chorus was beginning to ebb, their calls coming further apart, as if they too were growing drowsy. The forest was drifting into an even deeper stillness. The mist hung thick and pearlescent. In its embrace, the lanterns looked like gentle moons, and the boundary of the grove faded into a soft blur. The entire world, for now, was just this circle of light and the reassuring darkness around it. The wanderer felt himself at the very edge of sleep. He considered rousing and walking back to his own dwelling, but quickly abandoned the idea. He was already in the safest place he could be, at home, in the heart of the forest, under watch of kindly trees and lights. The thought of the short journey back along the paths felt unnecessary. Instead, he snuggled deeper into the moss, adjusting his shawl over himself. The ancient tree's root cradled him perfectly. He could feel its solidity and life underneath, like a steady heartbeat. From the corner of his eye, he saw a faint glow near the base of one of the trees. A cluster of bioluminescent mushrooms had awakened in the darkness. They glowed a soft bluish green along the bark, a tiny hidden counterpart to the lanterns above. The grove was filled from ground to sky with gentle lights, every level of it alive and shining. He chuckled quietly at the beautiful symmetry. His eyes drifted closed at last. He felt as if he were floating in a sea of light. Even behind closed eyelids, he could still sense the soft glow around him, orange, white, and green mingling into a lullaby of color. The boundary between waking and dreaming grew thin and hazy. His breathing slowed. The night sounds blurred pleasantly. For a final moment, his mind returned to the carved message and its promise. He felt it living in his own experience now. Here he was, a solitary wanderer, yet he had been guided to this place of light and friendship. However far each person's journey, they were all connected under this canopy. With that comforting thought, the wanderer surrendered fully to sleep. The great tree above him swayed gently in the night breeze, rocking him in its limbs. He knew the lanterns would continue to glow for hours yet, keeping gentle watch. And he knew that when the morning came, when the pale beams of dawn filtered through the leaves, he would wake in a world still wrapped in kindness and calm. In this safe and magical place, all lights and all lives were intertwined, ensuring that no one would ever be lost or alone in the dark. The lantern grove remained quiet and luminous as the wanderer's breathing deepened into the soft rhythms of sleep. High above, the stars and the last lanterns kept their vigil, shining steadily until the first light of tomorrow